People still say that you are too sensitive, that you need to learn to have a thicker skin to avoid being bruised by the collisions of life. Society often looks at the silence, the emotional intensity, or the tendency to withdraw and labels it as weakness. But the fundamental misunderstanding is that they see this sensitivity as a technical flaw in your character rather than realizing it is the most sophisticated radar system a human being can possess. The brutal truth that no one tells you is this: what the world calls your kindness or your empathy is sometimes a trauma response perfectly disguised as virtue. You did not choose to be sensitive to become a saint. You were forced to be sensitive to survive. Why do you feel exhausted even when you are doing nothing? Why can a casual remark from a stranger haunt you all night long? It is not because you are fragile, it is because your psychological mechanism is operating at an incredibly high frequency. In clinical psychology, we call this hypervigilance. When you grow up in an environment where emotional safety is a luxury, your autonomic nervous system automatically upgrades your mirror neurons to recognize patterns at a subconscious level. You become an expert at reading emotions. You notice the shift in breath, a fleeting frown, or the dissonance between someone's words and their energy. You had to learn to predict the storm before it arrived just to protect yourself. But the tragedy is that when you are too busy being present in the pain of others, you unintentionally lose your internal sovereignty. You fall into a state of over-functioning, attempting to fix the emotions of everyone around you just so you can feel a little safer. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The pain you carry is not your fate. Your exhaustion with surface-level connections, your desire to leave social media or noisy gatherings, is not an act of avoidance. It is a sign of discernment, a vital step in recalibrating your emotional capacity. Friction with the crowd is inevitable when you begin to awaken. People do not truly hate you. They hate that your presence exposes the insecurities and the empty spaces within themselves. When you stop playing the role of the savior, when you stop consuming the emotional trash of others, they feel threatened. Your transformation makes those accustomed to exploiting you feel a loss of control. But remember, boundaries are not weapons for attack, they are fences to protect peace. Your silence now is not an escape, it is a filtration. You are no longer silent because you fear conflict, you are silent because you have understood deeply that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Feeling tired, wanting to isolate, or choosing to leave a toxic relationship is not your fault. It is a sign of maturity. You are learning to move from a life of performance, where you must play the strong one, the one who always understands, to a life of authentic presence. You are reclaiming control from the wounded ego and handing it over to your internal sovereignty. What others perceive as coldness or selfishness is actually a symbol of emotional intelligence, self-respect, and the deepest compassion for yourself. You no longer live to serve the expectations of society, you live in alignment with your soul. And when you achieve that, when you no longer require external validation to feel worthy, then as Jung suggested, nothing and no one can ever hurt you again. Not because the world has become kinder, but because you have become whole. You have brought light into the dark places, integrated the fragments of yourself, and transformed pain into power. True safety does not come from a thicker skin, but from a steady center of consciousness where external impacts find no foothold to destroy you. You are no longer a victim of your sensitivity, you are its master. This heightened state of being is not a choice you made, it is an architecture you were born with. In the realm of clinical psychology, we understand that for a person with a sensitive nervous system, the world does not come at you in manageable waves, but in a constant, relentless flood. When we speak of capacity, we are talking about the sheer volume of external data your soul can process before it begins to fracture. For the average person, a crowded room is just noise. For you, it is a symphony of unspoken resentments, hidden desires, and vibrating anxieties. You are picking up the ghost frequencies of every room you enter. This is why your overfunctioning became a necessity. If you could sense the tension in your mother's breath or the silent anger in your father's footsteps, you could adjust yourself. You could become the peacekeeper, the invisible one, or the one who is always okay so as not to add to the burden. You built a survival bridge to cross the turbulent waters of your early environment, and now you find yourself still standing on that bridge, trying to hold it together for people who never asked to cross it in the first place. This is the exhausting cycle of the unhealed empath. You are using your life force to regulate the emotions of people who refuse to regulate themselves. But as you begin to reclaim your sovereignty, a strange and uncomfortable friction begins to occur. You start to notice that as you become more present with yourself, you become less available for the performance of others. And the world does not like it when the reliable one stops being reliable. When you stop being the bridge, people get angry because they now have to learn how to swim. They will accuse you of being cold. They will tell you that you've changed, that you are being difficult, or that you are too in your head. Understand this deeply. They do not hate you. They hate the fact that your newfound discernment is a mirror reflecting their own lack of self-work. Your boundaries are not an act of aggression, they are an act of self-preservation. When you withdraw, it is not because you are stuck in your trauma, but because you are finally honoring your capacity. You are no longer willing to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. This isolation you feel is not a prison, it is a chrysalis. It is the only place where the noise of the world fades enough for you to finally hear the sound of your own soul. You are not losing people, you are filtering out the vibrations that no longer align with the truth of who you are. The backlash you experience when you start saying no is the ultimate test of your newfound sovereignty. You must realize that for many, they did not love you, they loved the version of you that was convenient for them. They loved the mirror you held up, the one that made them feel heard, validated, and allowed them to escape their own shadows. When you stop providing that service, you are essentially breaking an unspoken contract. But this contract was signed in the blood of your own exhaustion, and it is time to revoke it. This friction is not a sign that you are doing something wrong, it is a sign that you are finally doing something right. This friction is the birth of discernment. Discernment is the quiet wisdom that allows you to see the difference between someone who is genuinely seeking connection and someone who is merely seeking a host for their emotional parasites. For an empath, discernment is more than a skill, it is a spiritual necessity. Without it, your light is scattered and eventually extinguished. With it, your energy becomes a focused beam that illuminates your own path rather than just lighting the way for everyone else's convenience. You are moving away from the performance of being the perfect, tireless listener and moving toward the presence of being a whole human being with limits. As you step into this awakening, you will inevitably face the guilt of the giver. You have been conditioned to believe that your value is tied to your usefulness. You feel a sharp pang of shame when you see someone hurting and choose not to intervene. But look closer at that guilt. It is not yours, it is a remnant of a time when your safety depended on keeping others regulated. Releasing this guilt is the highest form of self-compassion. You are not responsible for the emotional climate of others. You are not the vicar of pain for the world. You are only responsible for the sovereignty of your own heart. Setting boundaries is the outward expression of this internal realization. A boundary is not a weapon used to attack. It is a gate that determines who is worthy of your energy. It is the physical manifestation of your self-respect. When you set a boundary, you are not being aggressive, you are being honest. You are saying, like, this is where I begin and where you end. This is what my capacity can hold, and this is what it cannot. By honoring your capacity, you are finally stopping the cycle of over-functioning. You are choosing truth over a fake peace. And ironically, it is only through this truth that a real, unshakable peace can finally be found. This transition from being a mirror to becoming an anchor is the most painful yet most vital stage of your evolution. For years you have been a mirror, reflecting everyone's needs, fears, and expectations back to them. You were so transparent that people could see themselves through you, but they never truly saw you. Now, as you integrate your shadow and claim your sovereignty, you are becoming opaque. You are becoming a solid, grounded anchor. This opacity is what the world perceives as coldness, but in reality it is the birth of your true self. You are no longer a hollow vessel to be filled by the world's noise, you are a sanctuary inhabited by your own presence. In this state of presence, you begin to understand that your silence is not a void, but a filter. You no longer feel the need to fill the uncomfortable silences in a room or to explain your boundaries to those who are determined to misunderstand them. You realize that no is a complete sentence and that your time is a sacred currency. This is what we call the discernment of the soul. It is the ability to look at a situation, a person, or an invitation and feel, within the depths of your body, whether it aligns with your truth or drains your life force. If it is not a hell yes, it is a no. This isn't being difficult. It is being honest. It is honoring the limited capacity of your human heart. The modern world, with its relentless performance on social media and its glorification of constant doing, will try to shame you for this stillness. It will tell you that you are falling behind, that you are becoming irrelevant, or that you are checking out. But I want you to reframe this. You are not checking out of life. You are checking into your own reality. You are choosing the depth of a single, meaningful connection over the surface-level noise of 1,000 digital echoes. You are choosing to be present in the room where you actually are, rather than performing for a room that doesn't exist. This is the ultimate act of rebellion for an empath, to be completely, unashamedly themselves, even when that self is quiet, selective, and still. Carl Jung knew that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. As you shed the skin of the eternal giver and the wounded healer, you are finally accepting that privilege. You are realizing that you don't need to save the world to be worthy of existing in it. Your existence is not a debt you pay by being useful, it is a miracle you honor by being whole. The pain of the past was the forge, the isolation was the temple, and your newfound boundaries are the gates. You have moved from a state of over-functioning for the ungrateful to a state of sovereign being for yourself. And in this alignment you find a strength that the world cannot give, and therefore the world cannot take away. To arrive at this place of untouchability, you must undergo the most difficult ritual of all, the death of the savior. As an empath, you have built your entire identity around being the person who understands, the one who holds space, the one who stays when everyone else leaves. You have carried the secret pride of being a martyr. But look closely at this role. Is it an act of love, or is it a fear-based strategy to ensure you are never abandoned? If you are indispensable, you believe you are safe. This is the shadow side of the healer. To truly heal, you must be willing to be useless to those who only value you for what you can do for them. You must be willing to let people fail. You must be willing to let them face their own consequences even when it is painful to watch. True compassion is not about carrying someone else's cross, it is about having the strength to carry your own so that they might be inspired to do the same. When you over-function for others, you are actually robbing them of their own growth. You are interfering with their soul's curriculum. Jung's process of individuation demands that you return the burdens that do not belong to you. This is where the guilt tries to pull you back. It whispers that you are being cruel or heartless. But releasing people to their own journey is the highest form of respect you can give them. It is an acknowledgement of their sovereignty and a reclamation of your own. This reclamation requires you to embrace your own shadow, the parts of you that are capable of saying no, the parts that are angry at being used, and the parts that simply want to be left alone. For too long you have repressed these aspects of yourself because they didn't fit the image of the kind empath. But without your anger you have no fire to forge your boundaries. Without your selfishness, you have no way to protect your capacity. Integrating these shadows doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you a whole person. A whole person is much harder to manipulate than a good person. A whole person is grounded in the reality of their own needs, not just the perception of others' desires. This is the unshakable state that Jung spoke of. It is not a state of being a stone, but a state of being a deep, vast ocean. The surface may be tossed by the storms of other people's opinions, betrayals, or losses, but the depth remains still and undisturbed. You have finally realized that the world's chaos is not a reflection of your worth. You have stopped looking for your reflection in the eyes of people who are blind to their own light. You are no longer waiting for permission to be at peace. You are the peace. You have become the mountain that watches the clouds pass by, sometimes dark, sometimes light, but always moving, while you remain rooted in the soil of your own soul. This shift into your own sovereignty is the moment the world loses its bite. For so long, you were vulnerable because you were porous. You had no skin to separate your soul from the collective anxiety of the room. But as you embrace your capacity and honor your rangyoi, you are developing a spiritual immune system. Nothing and nobody can ever hurt you again in the way they once did, because the hooks they used to hang their guilt, their shame, and their expectations on have been removed. They may still throw their stones, they may still speak their criticisms, but those stones no longer find a wound to land in. They simply fall to the ground inert and powerless. This is not because you have become cold, but because you have become clear. You are moving from the exhausting world of performance into the quiet sanctuary of presence. In the world of performance, you had to be on all the time. You had to be the most understanding friend, the most tireless worker, the most self-sacrificing partner. But in the world of presence, you simply are. You realize that your value is not a variable that changes based on how much you do for others. Your value is a constant, as steady as the breath in your lungs. When you stop performing, you will lose those who only loved the show. Let them go. Their departure is not a loss, it is a chatlock. It is the universe clearing space for connections that are based on alignment rather than exploitation. Stop apologizing for your need to withdraw. Stop feeling guilty for the days when you have no words for anyone. This is not a failure of your character, it is a recalibration of your system. You are a deep-sea creature living in a shallow water world, and sometimes you must return to the depths where the pressure is right and the silence is total. In that silence, you are not being anti-social, you are being pro-soul. You are reclaiming your sovereignty from a society that wants to consume you. Your imlang is a sacred boundary. It is the place where you meet yourself, where you integrate your experiences, and where you gather the strength to remain unshakable in the face of the next storm. You are finally learning that you do not need to be a martyr to be a miracle. You do not need to bleed to prove that you have a heart. The pain of the past was simply the friction of you trying to fit into a mold that was too small for your spirit. Now that you have broken the mold, the friction is gone. You are free to move through the world with a sense of internal sovereignty that no external event can diminish. You are the master of your own Dung Luong Kam Suk, the architect of your own peace and the guardian of your own light. The journey of the empath is not to be a victim of the world's noise, but to be the silence that can hold it all without being broken by it. And so, we arrive at the final truth, the one that will finally set your spirit free from the chains of expectation. For a lifetime, you have walked this earth with your heart exposed, believing that your sensitivity was a wound that would never heal. You felt every sting, every betrayal, and every cold silence as if it were a verdict on your worth. But today, as you stand in the light of your own sovereignty, you realize that the version of you that lived for the approval of others is gone. That version died so that the real you could finally breathe. There is no more need for guilt. If you have to walk away from people who refuse to meet you in your depth, do it with a peaceful heart. If you have to choose silence over a shallow conversation, do it without apology. Your exhaustion was never a sign of failure. It was the sacred alarm of your soul telling you that you were giving away pieces of yourself to a world that didn't know how to hold them. You are no longer over-functioning for those who refuse to do the work. You are no longer the sacrificial lamb for the comfort of the crowd. You have reclaimed your capacity, and in doing so you have reclaimed your life. Look at your boundaries not as walls, but as the beautiful golden edges of your own being. They are the definition of where your light begins and where the noise of the world ends. When you live from this place of alignment, the words of the critics become like leaves falling onto the surface of a deep, still lake. They create a tiny ripple, but they cannot disturb the profound silence of the depths. This is the unshakable state that Jung promised. It is the realization that the world did not give you your light, and therefore the world has no power to take it away. You are whole. You are integrated. You are the master of your internal kingdom. From this moment on, you can walk through the storm and feel the wind, but you will not be the wind. You can witness the pain of others and offer your presence, but you will not become the pain. You have transformed your trauma into a temple of discernment and your sensitivity into a shield of pure awareness. Rest now in this newfound strength. Breathe in the quiet power of your own presence, for you have finally discovered the secret that changes everything. When you belong completely to yourself, you are no longer a hostage to the world. Nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again, for you have found the home you were always searching for, within the sanctuary of your own soul.